Hey guys, how's it going? It is Travis Mortz with the Forest Hill Film Lab. Today I am going to be focusing on the work of Diane Arbus. In the past I've done videos, just different photo books, things like that, about some of my favorite photographers. And Diane Arbus she's one of those special photographers from the 60s that her career was very short, but it was very influential in photography. And then she died in 1971, and that was, her work kind of lived on forever, even though it wasn't a huge body of work. It's something that we've all been able to look back on and kind of draw inspiration from. And so I've got a couple books here that I'm going to show you guys and kind of share with you some of the things that she did do in her career, and just kind of share with you some stories about her life and about her career that really fascinate me and motivate me in my own career, or in my own photography rather. So I'm going to show you guys a couple books, talk to you a little bit about Diane, and hopefully this get you guys stoked to make some work yourself at home. So over the years, I have been a book collector. I love books, and but I'm a little picky. I do like to pick out books from photographers that I'm familiar with, or photographers that I have, I'm a fan of. So a few years back, my girlfriend Kelly got me this book because I'm a huge Gary Winogrand fan. I love Gary Winogrand. His street photography is extremely influential, and I love his work, and I love the way he operates behind the lens. So she got me this book called New Documents. And you know how it goes when you get a new book. You don't just dive right into it right away. Usually, sometimes you just put it on the shelf and kind of look at it, and don't give it too much attention. So that's kind of how this book was for me. I didn't know much about it. I looked at it a little bit, looked at the photos, and that was kind of it. And then over the years, I always go to old bookstores and things like that, and I found another Diane Arbus book, because Diane Arbus was part of this book as well. So I found a Diane Arbus book, and I bought it, and again, just kind of flipped through it and checked it out, whatever. And then just last year, I went to Washington D.C., and they had a Diane Arbus show there, and so I got to see some Diane Arbus prints in person, and that was really special, and that kind of it educated me on her career and on her life, and I started to take a lot of interest. Well, once I came home, I saw this book on my bookshelf, New Documents, and it had Diane Arbus on the front, along with Lee Friedlander, which is another excellent photographer that I'm a huge fan of, and Gary Winogrand. So I decided, well, shit, I've been slacking on this book. I should really crack it open and see what it's all about. So, New Documents was a Museum of Modern Art photo show, an exhibition in New York in 1967. Now, the three people in the exhibition were Diane Arbus, Lee Friedlander, and Gary Winogrand. And at the time, these were all new people on the scene of documentary photography. They were new, and that's why this is called New Documents. The documentary photographers of the decade or the past prior to that would have been like Dorothea Lange and the farm administration photographers that worked during that time. And so those are my favorite photographers, is Dorothea Lange and her colleagues. And that's because I really loved the way that they photographed social issues. They photographed things to make a change. Now, this new wave of photographers kind of had a different perspective on things. So I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to show you guys a little bit about this book, and then I'm also going to dive into some of these other books. So this is kind of a cool diagram on the inside here. This is like the gallery, showing how the gallery was set up. We got Gary Winogrand's and Lee Friedlander here in this gallery, and then over here in small gallery number 1, Diane Arbus had her own room. Something that was fascinating about this New Documents book is, unlike a lot of Museum of Modern Art shows, they would come out with a book or a publication that went with that show. But for some reason, this exhibition didn't have that. There was no publication or book made for this New Documents show. So this book here that I have is actually, made long after the show was already over, and it's made from, accumulated information about it. And people had to do a lot of work to kind of put this book together. This is not a Museum of Modern Art publication from that exhibition. So this one kind of tells you more so the history of this exhibition that went on in 1967. Here you've got some photos of the people that were in it. You got Lee Freelander, and you got Diane Arbus in some of these photos. And so this book's pretty fascinating to me because it's kind of shining light on an exhibition that we wouldn't have normally got to see if somebody didn't go in after the fact and find all this information. So this is like the I don't know, the wall label. Okay, I was gonna say I don't really know what this would have been called, but when you go into a gallery show, there's usually a big printout on the wall, and it's kind of explaining to you what you're about to be seeing. It's explaining to you what this collection of photographs is all about. And this was written by John Szarkowski. John Szarkowski is a famous curator. He was actually a curator for the Museum of Modern Art for about 3 decades. But this would have been done early on in his career when he was just at the MoMA for a few years. He was still a young guy, still just starting out. John Szarkowski also curated like the Dorothea Lange show that was put on after her death, which is another one of my favorites, which I have a book from that showing. But like I said, this one had no book. This one was kind of just put out there. It toured the country a little bit, and then it kind of just went to the wayside. So I'm just going to read you a little bit of the wall label so then you could get a better feeling for exactly what this show was about. So this was new documents from February 28th to May 7th, 1967. And it says, most of those who were called documentary photographers a generation ago, when the label was new, made their pictures in the service of social cause. It was their aim to show what was wrong with the world and to persuade their fellows to take action and make it right. In the past decade, a new generation of photographers has directed the documentary approach towards more personal ends. Their aim has not been to reform life, but to know it. Their work betrays a sympathy, almost an affection for the imperfections and the frailties of society. They like the real world in spite of its terrors, and the source of all wonder and fascination and value, no less precious for being irrational. This exhibition shows a handful of pictures by 3 photographers of that generation. What unites them is not style or sensibility. Each has a distinct and personal sense of the uses of photography and meanings of the world. What they hold in common is the belief that the commonplace is really worth looking at, and the courage to look at it with a minimum of theorizing. The portraits of Diane Arbus show that all of us, the most ordinary and the most exotic of us, are, on closer scrutiny, remarkable. The honesty of her vision is an order belonging only to those of truly generous spirit. Lee Friedlander, standing at a greater emotional distance from his subjects, reconstructs our world in precise and elegant metaphors, showing its people in and through their most valued environments, their homes and offices, and shops and pageant grounds. Gary Winogrand's jokes, like those of the Rabelais, are no less serious for being funny and in the best sense vulgar. His taste for life, being stronger than his regard for art, makes him equal even to the task of confronting the comedy of his own time. These 3 photographers would prefer that their pictures be regarded not as art, but as life. This is not quite possible, for a picture is, after all, only a picture, but these pictures might well change our sense of what life is like. So, I don't know, what I took from that is this is talking about how these guys are true street photographers. They are not trying to change the world. They are trying to document the world as it is. Diane Arbus, she specializes in portraits of people. From my research, what she really likes is a frontal pose. And what that means is she likes her subject to be engaged with the camera. She likes her subject to be, very aware of their photograph being taken, and she really likes to, kind of get into their soul with her camera. Lee Friedlander, if you look at the photos from this show, he likes to shoot a lot of reflections and shadows and photographs through windows, and he kind of likes to be on the outside. Lee Friedlander really likes to document the world as it's happening around him and doesn't really engage with his subject. And then Gary Winogrand's a whole nother kind of guy. Gary Winogrand likes to make people uncomfortable and capture their response. He likes to get in, under people's skin and really photograph what's happening around him. And sometimes he's even, kind of a part of it. He's even, almost invoking a response from his subjects and then capturing that response as it happens. So the thing is that Diane Arbus, she has a very special approach to photography because her work is mostly frontal portraiture. She is shooting her subject looking straight into the lens. She's this close to her subject. She wants to be a part of the process. And as a result, she has very, very strong portraits of her subjects. And in addition, she's really focused her work not on the ordinary. She has gone to the outskirts of society. She has tried to find the people that are truly different from all of us, and she photographs them to highlight how different we all are from one another. She's not photographing, the common businessman day in and day out. She's looking for the freaks of the world. She's looking for the disenfranchised. She's looking for the people that would not normally have their photograph taken, and she is asking them to look straight into her camera. So I'm going to show you guys some of her work. And the reason that this show is so special is because just a few years before this, Diane Arbus was just a normal professional photographer. She was out there shooting family portraits. She was out there shooting everyday stuff, making a living with her camera, and not necessarily making art with her camera. And so this was in 1967. In 1963, she got a Guggenheim grant, and she kind of started venturing towards a more artistic approach to her photography. She abandoned her professional roots, and she started making art, and she started making bodies of work. And as a result, her work became much stronger and gave us the Diane Arbus work that we know and love today. And additionally, the thing that I think is really cool about this is inside this book, they have a lot of newspaper articles advertising the show. They have, if you look here, this is a photo of the show happening. And the headliner, the actual, poster for the show was a Diane Arbus photograph. She was like, from what I could gather, she was like the star of this show. Every newspaper article had a Diane Arbus photo. Every banner had a Diane Arbus photo. And then these two other guys were, her cohorts. They were working with her, but it was like a Diane Arbus exhibition. She got her own room. These other guys shared a room. And that's really cool to me. I've always really I don't know what it is, but I've really taken to female photographers. I think it's because there's so many male photographers in this industry that the female photographer, in order to stand out in this day and age, had to be very special. And as a result, all female photographers' work is extremely powerful, extremely striking, and that is why they got noticed. That is why they ended up making a name for themselves, is because their work ended up being very, very powerful, and that's kind of how it all came to be. So I'm going to flip through here to show you some of her work. So here's another cool photo. This is Gary Winogrand's children in front of the poster or the banner. This is clearly from a contact sheet. And the thing that's really special about Diane Arbus's work, here's the wall of her actual prints, and you can see they're all frontal portraits. They're all portraits of subjects looking straight into the camera. And I'll read you some of the titles. This is Two Young Women, Washington Square Park, 1965. She's finding people she's just finding people in society that are special, that are different, clearly different than the rest of us, and she's highlighting those people. But then in her body of work, she will also have your ordinary person to just kind of add that contrast to really show you that we are all so different, but you know, so much the same as well. So here's two young women. This is identical twins. This is one of her most famous photos. You can see this twin's a little bit happy, and this twin's got a little bit more of a frown on her face, and just the contrast between those two subjects. This is two female impersonators, Brooklyn, New York, 1961. This is a burlesque comedian. Diane really immersed herself in the not the freak show stage, but she did immerse herself in that that kind of world where she was friends to these people. She was trusted by people that were different because they knew that she wasn't scrutinizing them. She was celebrating them. Here we have Triplets. We've got a girl with a cigar. You know, this is just not the ordinary. She was looking for the the extraordinary. This is a young man and his pregnant wife, and as you can see, this is 1965. This is an interracial couple of that. In that time, that would have been highly controversial, and she was celebrating them. This is a young boy in Washington Square Park, New York City, 1966. Let's see. She spent time in Pennsylvania at a nudist colony. Here's a lady with swan sunglasses at the nudist colony. This is just a woman. This is kind of what I was talking about. There's nothing particularly different or striking about this woman, except that it's just a really strong portrait. I'll show you guys some more. Young girl at the nudist camp. This one's another famous one. Married couple at home, nudist camp. She's kind of trying to make ordinary. These are just nudists in their living room, just chilling. And you can see on top of the TV they have some family portraits. And they're just very comfortable with her, which is, so telling in her photographs. Her nudist series was extremely popular in this show. As they talk about, in the end here, they talk about how the show went on tour to, different galleries around the country. And every few stops, a piece of art would get stolen. And it was always her nudist photos. They would have to write her a letter and say, Diane, I'm so sorry, but one of your works, nudist, something, got stolen, and we're deeply sorry. This is a Puerto Rican housewife, young man on a sofa. These are the normal people of the show that still she's giving credit to. Girl at home with souvenir dog. This is a really cool one because this one doesn't have any people in it. It's just a nice Christmas living room, but it still kind of exemplifies family. It still kind of exemplifies the fact that there's a family structure there. This is a transvestite at home. Here we have teenage couple. This was the cover photo for the whole entire show. This young teenage couple, the nice contrast between their jackets. Rooming house parlor, lady with a briefcase and plastic pocketbook. She's just capturing every bit of society and highlighting them. Puerto Rican woman with a beauty mark. A widow in her bedroom. She's just got all this nice fancy stuff, and she's just kind of chilling in her bedroom. And these are the thing about Diane Arbus's work. Here's a young man in curlers with some long nails. Russian midget friends. This is what I was talking about. She kind of made friends with the freaks of the world and, befriended them and photographed them. The thing about Diane Arbus is that she never actually made a body of work into a book. It was one of her goals. It was one of the things that she wanted to do with her life, but she ended up dying before that. So this body of work was her first exhibition. This was kind of like the first photographs that we saw of her. And these are kind of the most famous photographs we've seen from her because they are some of her best work. And she didn't really release a whole lot of work aside from this stuff. This one's super famous. This Exasperated Boy with Toy Hand Grenade, 1962. We got another transvestite here. This work is extremely powerful. I love the square format. She used a twin lens camera. Junior Interstate Ballroom Dance Champions. And we've got two female impersonators backstage, New York. And then we move on to Lee Freelander's work. And like I said, he likes a lot of shadows, reflections, shooting through windows. I'll get into these on another day probably. But that's extremely special, this book and this body of work. And they all lead into one another. So that's going to lead me to the next one. So over the years that I've collected these books, I've just kind of got them, and I actually got them all in order. But last night I went through and started looking through each book and reading about Diane Arbus's career. And they all kind of lead into one another. So after New Documents came out, which was, like I said, just an exhibition, she had some of her work shown, but there was no book, there was no publication. She actually wrote a letter to a friend saying that she wanted to start working on a book, an actual publication. She wanted a body of work that she could be proud of and that could be sold, in stores and whatnot, much like the Americans or something like that. And her goal was to make a book called Family Album. And what she wanted to kind of take those, those mundane family portraits. The thing about family portraits is that they are made for a singular client. You take the family portraits for that person, you deliver them to that person, they're enjoyed by the family and, close friends or whatnot, and that's kind of it. It's not meant to be a broader spectrum of work. It's not meant to be shared on a larger scale. So what she wanted to do is she kind of wanted to take that premise of a family portrait and put it into a book and make it a work of art that was larger than the job itself. It would last longer than here's your fall family photos. That being said, the book never came to be. It was merely like just an idea of hers that she started working towards. With any body of work, it takes time. And, this show was in 1967. In 1968, she decided that she wanted to start working on Family Album. And then she died in 1971 to suicide. So, she really didn't have the time that she needed to create this body of work and complete it. It would have been rushed. It would have not been so. It just wouldn't have worked out. She was working on it. So this is another one of those books that, this is not a Diane Arbus book. This is, she didn't make this. This is made after the fact by her family. This was made after the fact with accumulated photographs and things like that. So, but the thing is that with this idea in mind, with this family album thought process that she had, she approached her photography with that. And again, this is the book that I mentioned and that I read about the frontal portrait that she was really trying to create. She was really trying to get into people's homes, photograph them photograph them, staring at the camera, that standard frontal pose that she got from some of her favorite photographers, like who is one of her favorite? Evan Walker Walker Evans and August Sander. I've actually mentioned August Sander in a podcast before. He was an amazing portrait photographer where he actually built a catalog of portraits over 20 years where he was photographing every type of person in Germany, a baker, a policeman, a cowboy, all these different people, and they were all very straightforward frontal portraits. So I'll show you some of the work in here. The cool part about this book is that it has a lot of talking about her her aspirations and what she wanted to do with this body of work that never really came to be. And then also it talks about, there's a section in here that says finding, it says, searching for Diane Arbus's family album in her box of 10 photographs monograph. And the box of 10 photographs is actually this last thing that I have to show you, which is the most special book in my collection. So the cool part about this book is that it actually has contact sheets. She did family portraits for a family in New York, and she ended up shooting like 365 photos. And this book has a lot of the contact sheets, so you get to see her B-sides. You get to see the work that was never shown to anybody. But here you go. Here's some examples of Diane Arbus's portraiture, and these are, you know, this book never came to be. This body of work never came to be. She didn't set aside selections. She did nothing for this body of work besides building an archive. But these are photographs that were pulled from her collection and pulled from her archive that maybe would have fallen in line with the family album premise. So these are just different people. Blaze Star at home, Tokyo Rose at home. She shot famous people because at this point she had now had a MoMA show and she was able to get more upscale clients, and she was able to be trusted by them to be in their home. But see, this is 1938, this is 1965, and these are merely just, you know, suggestions of photographs that maybe would have fallen in line with this body of work, but like I said, it never came to be. Here are just some Diane Arbus straight frontal portraits. Like I said, these are the person staring right into the camera. There's no frills. She is really shooting the subject and trying to connect with the subject with her camera. And you know, the thing is that some of her most famous work was shot in this style. A lot of her photos were shot in this style, and there's something extremely strong about that. Here's Jane Mansfield. That's a very famous woman of the 60s, and she actually got to go to her house and photograph her family. So here's a sculptor. She's basically just photographing these people, very straightforward. And me personally, when I do family portraits, I kind of like shooting it like this too, but I've never really gone into it with that thought process in mind of I'm going to shoot a frontal portrait of this subject. Here's a beauty book from 1960. And like I said, she was a professional photographer before she became an artistic, you know, photographer. So a lot of her body of work could have been, you know, old stuff that she shot, you know, that she shot for work, that she shot for money. Actor in Rooming House. And, you know, here we go. And then a lot of these photos, actually, they kind of switch over to some of her people that she was inspired by. And so here's the king and queen of the senior citizens dance. This is another one of her famous photos. And then we go over to Walker Evans. They show some Walker Evans portraits, which are kind of in this style, to show where she would have drawn inspiration from. These are all, you know, old photos. Walker Evans still. These are not Diane Arbus photos. And then August Sander, he's the guy I was talking about that did a huge body of work in the early 1900s. This is 1906. And then here's another August Sander. I mean, look at this. This looks like classic Diane Arbus. She was really pulling from one of the greats from her past. These were, you know, these are photographs that were made before she was born, much like Diane Arbus's photos are to us now. I think it's important to remember that no work that you're going to do today is original. It's already been done, and it's already been done better by somebody else. So the best you could do is to go back in time, go back in history, and learn from those people, and try to do your best to recreate that style of portraiture, because it's tried and true. I mean, look at this. Is so like her body of work that I just showed you with the twins and the teenage couple. You know, they're side by side, very straightforward. These are all August Sander photographs, which are excellent pieces of work. And then I'm going to flip back through to the end of this book, so you can see here's some more Diane Arbus work. Very similar style, very similar feeling. Here's Marcella Mattei. This is this is the cover of the book. And then you could go here to the end of the book, and then this is actually going to show you contact sheets from these photo shoots, and you get to see that, you know, just because she had a great body of work doesn't mean that every photo was a banger. She still had to work through the process. She still had to shoot multiple rolls after multiple rolls to get that look that she wanted, to get that those photos that she wanted. So here's you know, some contact sheets. And this is kind of a special book. It's just a one-off book, but it gives us a glimpse into Diane Arbus's process. It gives us a glimpse into how she made her photographs great. And, you can see this similar style of just very straightforward photographs, but they are tried and true. They work every single time. And, this is... what they highlighted here is they didn't want any extraordinary backgrounds. They wanted the photos to be of the subject and the subject only. And not, so today so often we want to go to a cool abandoned building, or we want to go to a nice streetscape and try to shoot someone standing in the middle of the street. Diane Arbus was not about that. These photos were about the people and not about the where they were located. So that book is really cool, and it just kind of gives us a glimpse into her process. And that leads us into this next book, which is, like I mentioned earlier, this is the most special book in my whole entire collection. I'll give you a brief breakdown on this book. This book is called A Box of 10 Photographs. And so in 1970... or 69-70, she decided that she was going to put out a body of 10 photographs of some of her most popular images, because she already had popular images from this new documents show. And she was going to advertise it in a photo magazine for people to purchase. And so she was going to make 50 sets, and they were going to be housed in a plastic case, and then there's going to be 10 portraits in there, and you could rotate the portraits to the front and then display them on a wall in almost like a picture frame. And so she marketed this to fellow photographers and people alike. And the first person to buy the first one was Richard Avedon, which, if you know anything about portrait photography, is an extremely esteemed photographer. And so he has the first box of 10 photographs. Well, the sad thing is that there was only ever 6 made. Because after she printed 6 of these sets, she committed suicide, and the 50 sets were never completed. So in the world, there's only 6 sets of these box of 10 photographs, and for each individual person that she sold them to, she added 1 extra special photograph for that person only. So each person got another photo, an 11th photo, but the premise behind this was still not a book. This was still not a publication that anybody could buy. This was actually a box of her own prints, her own photographs that was predetermined, and then she would throw in that 11th one to be special. So this book is kind of illustrating how that whole body of work would have been displayed. So we have the plexiglass, the plastic box that it would have come in. And then this is her own handwriting. This is actually a picture of the box. When I went to the MoMA, they had one of these boxes was donated to the Museum of Modern Art. And this was actually being displayed at the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. And I got to see the box of 10 photographs in person with these actual Diane Arbus prints. And so this one was sold to, I'm not sure what the woman's name was, but you can see a box of 10 photographs, and then she crossed out 10 and put 11, and it said, especially for BF. And on Richard Avedon's box, it says, especially for RA. And you can see that this box was 5 of 50. Like I said, there was only 6 made. And so here's the book. And then now it's, again, kind of a book. And the way that she did this was so special. In between every single photo, she had a piece of like tracing paper. I'm not sure, like vellum. And she wrote on each piece of vellum what the title of the photo was, and in her handwriting. And so this book is now displayed in that way. So this is, you would have had to, the reason she did that is because she wanted each photograph to kind of be revealed, kind of be uncovered. She didn't want it to just be there. She wanted you to know. So this one says, young family in Brooklyn going for a Sunday outing. Let's see what else it says. Their baby is named Dawn. Their son is retarded. And so then you move the vellum and you have the print. And again, the reason that this is so special is because her body of work that she was working on, family album, was a huge influence for these photographs. And you could kind of see in her box of 10 photographs, these kind of are the family album photos that never came to be. These kind of would have fallen in line with the publication. Almost every single one of these kind of falls in line with the family structure. And so then here's a young man in curlers dreaming for an annual drag call, 1966. And she even crosses out mistakes. And then look on the back, she even writes things on the back. She writes on the back of the print exactly what the print is called. And this is, look at these photographs are familiar to us. This was in her New Documents show. So we're going to move on. Again, we've got our nudist people coming through here. This is going to say, retired man and his wife at home in a nudist camp in New Jersey one morning. On the TV set are framed photographs of each other. 1963. This is, again, that family feeling that I was talking about earlier. Here's her nudist. And so this body of work was meant to be her most popular photographs, made available to the public if you could afford it. Identical twins, Kathleen and Colleen, members of a twin club in New Jersey, 1966. This would have been a year before the New Documents show. And again, this is one of her most famous photographs. This one says, Lorno Morales, a Mexican dwarf in his hotel room, New York City. And these are all, kind of shot in people, not all of them, but these are shot in people's home. They are very intimate portraits. And being able to see these photos in person was so amazing. Here we go. Christmas tree in a living room in Levittown, Long Island. And this is one of the special photos that I like because it kind of still has that family structure even though there's no people in it. It's still suggesting a family structure. We're still in the living room. This one is, this is Eddie Carmel, a Jewish giant with his parents in the living room in their home in the Bronx, New York. So look at this guy. He's huge. But it's still a family portrait. He's, a giant man with his parents. This is a patriotic boy with straw hat, buttons, and flags wanting to march in the pro-war parade in 1967. Or waiting to march. Bomb Hanoi. And this is really also showing kind of the times that she was shooting in. This boy's obviously very proud of his outfit. He got dressed up that day. She wanted to highlight that. These are, their numbers were picked out of a hat. They were just chosen king and queen of a senior citizens dance in New York City. Yetta Jeanette is 72 and Hank Farrer is 79. They have never met before. So she's kind of highlighting the fact that these people don't even know each other, but they are king and queen, which is so special that she was able to capture that. What was she doing in a senior citizen's home at this time? I don't know. A family on the lawn, one Sunday in Westchester in June. Mom and dad laying out on the lawn, kids in the background playing in a plastic pool. Just such a familiar scene, but still such a special photograph. This one is Miss Gladys Nutzy Ulrich with the baby Sam, a stump-tailed macaw monkey in North Bergen, New Jersey. So here's a woman with her baby monkey. And that's it. That's the last photograph. And I believe that was the 11th photograph that was added into this box specifically for BF. So see, that's what the box would have looked like. And again, this ended up touring, later on. I got to see it, but this was never this was never a book. This was a box of photographs. This is a huge piece of vellum where she was practicing how she wanted to write, a box of 10 photographs. This was on display at the museum. It was just so amazing to be able to see her handwriting in so many different forms. So now that you've seen every photo in there, the rest of this book is basically talking about how she marketed this body of work and how she wanted to kind of create a portfolio that she could sell. This was not meant to interfere with her body of work that she was working on, a family portrait. She was not trying to make this a book. She wanted to create something that was collectible because a lot of photographers in that time were doing that. Here's some of her handwriting in a notebook. And she talked about, right here, she's showing off one of her prints from that series. And she decided, it said in 1969 she began to think about developing a portfolio of her photographs. The idea was suggested by Marvin Israel, but portfolios were already gaining some currency among photographer collectors. And in 1968, George Tice self-published the Amish Portfolio, a selection of 12 7x5 prints mounted on 14 by 11 inch boards, printed in an edition of 50. They sold for $75 each. And here's she's talking about it. She was saying, selling for $400 or $500 or $3. It'll be a business proposition, but pristine, and it won't conflict with an eventual book. I mean, it's like an edition of etchings or lithographs. The portfolio is ultimately comprised of a clear plexiglass box designed by Israel to double as a container or frame, holding 20 by 16 inch photographs printed by Arbus, with annotated vellum sheets. Between each print, it was to be an edition of 50, priced at $1,000 each. Its production, begun early that year, was plagued by technical problems. Arbus had difficulty drawing the prints flat without rippled edges. In March, she met with Peter Bunnell, then a curator of the Department of Photography at the Museum of Modern Art, who helped her compile a list of museums that might buy the portfolio. So, she was working on it, but it wasn't coming together the way she hoped. That's why only 6 were completed, which makes this body of work even more special to me. Here she is sending letters to people. She sent this to George B. Fry, and she sent little contact photos of the body of work and her idea of what she was hoping to do. The working title, if you can call it that, for my book, which I keep postponing, is Family Album. I mean, I am not working on it except to photograph like I would anyway. So all I have is a title and a publisher and a sort of sweet lust for things I want in it, like picking flowers or Noah's Ark. I could hardly bear to leave any animal out. So that's what's so special about this, is that, she's even acknowledging that she has not put together the time or the effort to make a book. It's still merely just an idea. And this is kind of like a segue, like an in-between. Well, hey, the book is still in the works, so I'm going to put out something so people can buy something from me. And ultimately, it ended up being her last contribution to the world of photography. And, little does she know that it was such an amazing contribution to the world of photography that we still regard it as some of the best portraits of the era. Here you can see different prints, how they were printed differently in each set. No two photos were alike. This kind of highlights to me that, although she was a great photographer, her printing skills maybe left a little to be desired. She said she was having trouble getting the prints to lie flat. Her framing here is different for each photo. It kind of tells me that, just like all of us, we're still not perfect. We still have a lot to learn in photography. You could always do better. Here's some more advertising. And she ended up advertising in Art Forum magazine. She got like a feature in Art Forum magazine where she put 5 photos in there, and this is where she kind of used this platform to advertise this box of 10 photographs, which, you know, she only ever made 6 of them, which I think is really, really amazing. Here is the 11th photo for Richard Avedon. It's like a woman in a wheelchair, masked woman in wheelchair. She's wearing a Halloween mask, and so that was Richard Avedon's 11th print. So it like leads me to wonder, what were the 11th photos for each person, because that was the thing that was different. The first 10 we all got to see, but each person who bought a box got an 11th photo, all different for each person. And I don't know, it's so amazing. So after her passing, after she committed suicide in 1971, this body of work went on to tour the country, tour the world actually. There it is in Venice. But right here, here's her biography. Born 1923, studied ethical culture and worked as a fashion photographer until 1959. Then she became a full-time photographic artist. In 1963 and 1966, she got Guggenheim Fellowships. And in 1971, she died. So this kind of tells you that her, you know, her professional or her artistic career was only about 12 years. And here we go, selected exhibitions. She was in New Documents, Museum of Modern Art in New York, which we talked about. And then she had a photography exhibition at the Osaka World Fair in 1970. So she was still, I mean, she was just starting her photography career. She was not esteemed like Dorothea Lange or Ansel Adams or some of these other, you know, Gary Winogrand went on to have multiple bodies of work in multiple different shows. Lee Freelander the same. She just burst out on the scene, and then she committed suicide. And so her body of work is very limited and still so strong as a result. Here's the show hanging up, and when I got to see it in person, it was hanging just the same, and it just, I don't know, it just felt like a step back into time, because I got to see this body of work the way it was displayed, you know, some 40, 50 years ago. And that is about it. Here we go. Here's some pictures of her advertising each print. Kind of, let's see. Stephen A. Frank's contact sheet of Diane Arbus at Rhode Island School of Design in 1970. She's showing her work here. And so yeah, this is a very special book to me, and being able to see this body of work in person kind of gave me the like a greater appreciation for Diane Arbus's work. Before I learned all of this about her, she was just a 60s photographer like anybody else. Oh yeah, she shot that photo of the kid holding the hand grenade. That's such a great shot. Oh yeah, she also shot that photo of the twins. Those are really cool. But I didn't know all this about her. I didn't know that she died in 1971. I didn't know that her career was so short-lived. I didn't know that, you know, I didn't know that she had this body of work that she only, you know, never really even finished. And so all those things kind of make her work a little more special to me. And it's kind of why I wanted to make a video all about Diane Arbus, just to kind of give her the credit where credit's due. And, you know, kind of inspire you guys to maybe go out and make some work like hers. Maybe pay some homage to her and try to go out and shoot some frontal portraits of your family and kind of shoot some Diane Arbus style photos, because as we've seen here, they are so strong and so excellent, and, you know, extremely inspiring to me anyways. So anyway, I know this video has been extremely long, but, you know, thanks to this crazy time in the world, I know you guys have time to watch it. So if you made it to the end, I really appreciate it. And until next time, thank you guys so much for watching, and keep on shooting.